So hi and welcome to the Firefly Adda, your virtual conversation starter, a platform which showcases inspiring stories from thought leaders from different walks of life. Today, we bring to you a very inspiring story, one that of positivity, humility, resolve, and eternal gratitude. We go into the very journey of a COVID warrior and bring out the life lessons from his experiences during the most challenging times of his life. We present to you a COVID warrior, Rahul Bhalla.
It was November 9th, 2020, when we learned that I was positive for COVID-19. It was confirmed positive because we know that there are no false positive reports, right? If there are negative reports, then there's still a chance that it's a false negative. But being a positive, we knew that there was no doubt that the report was correct. When we found out about my being positive, there were two emotions that came over me. Right? First one was a complete sense of disbelief. Right? How could this happen to me? We've taken every precaution in the book. We have not stepped out of the house. In fact, we've been so careful that we've been the point of ridicule for many of our friends and relatives. Right? So much so that when I had to take my daughter to a dentist appointment, we took her in a full PPE kit. Right? Yes, many people thought that was going overboard, right? Including the dentist. Right? So we haven't stepped out. Nobody stepped in, but yet. I tested positive, and it was just a complete state of disbelief. How could this happen to us? How could this happen to me? The second emotion that came over me when I found out I was positive was a sense of guilt. Right? I felt guilty for bringing this dreaded disease into the house. I felt guilty for possibly infecting my family and my loved ones. That sense of guilt and fear associated with that was probably more overwhelming than the fear about what will happen to me. So those are two big emotions. One of complete disbelief, and second of guilt. So what helped me the most when I was in the ICU and when I was at my worst? Well, there's two parts to it, right? One is clinically, right? And I'm not going to get into any medical prescriptions. I mean, we all know the debate about, the efficacy of the various treatment protocols, right? But I do know clinically the two things that helped me the most, at least that I felt I could see the improvement from, was first the NIV mask, right, or the NIV machine. Right? NIV is the non-invasive ventilator, right? It's the same ventilator machine that's used for intubation, but this is just not invasive. Right? That helped me the most, and I think the only reason I was in the ICU, or the primary reason I was in the ICU, was because ICU is the only place where you could get the NIV ventilators. Without that, I don't think my lungs would have recuperated the way they did. The second thing that helped me a lot, and I'm a strong advocate of this, is assuming the prone position. Right? In its simplest form, the prone position is about lying on your stomach. Right? So just turn around, lay down on your stomach. Right? It's harder to do than you might imagine, especially when you have masks on your face, or when you're weak, or when you've got severe body ache, right? But it is well worth the effort, right? And the results are instantaneous. So anybody who's struggling with breathing or low oxygen saturation levels, strongly recommend that they assume the prone position. Right? A more complex version of the proning position is to get into a get on all fours, your knees and your arms, right? Put your head down a little bit, and then deep from your lungs and from your stomach, start coughing. Right? What that does is that helps you secrete whatever germs or virus there might be in your lower sac in the lungs, and that's where the infection is most devastating. So those are the two things from a clinical perspective that I think helped me tremendously: the NIV mask and the prone position. Whether or not the medications help me or which medications help me, I'm going to leave that to the scientists. I have full faith in the science and the continued research around this disease. But for me, as a patient that's recovered, what worked is not important. The important thing is that it worked, right? Or is working. On the non-clinical side, or on the emotional side of things, there were a few things that I did that really helped me through the tough times. One is I tried to stay positive, right? It was very easy, especially in the ICU, to get depressed with everything that you see around you, right? Some of those images are so vivid. I'll probably never be able to shake them off. But staying positive was really, really important for me throughout, right? And it was easy to do that because I knew I was lucky. I knew I was lucky to be in the best hospital there. I knew I was lucky to get an ICU bed. I knew I was lucky to be able to afford the treatment. I knew I was lucky to have so many different things, right? And associated with that notion of being positive was being grateful, right? For all of these things that I just mentioned, it was really important to be grateful. Second thing that I did was I was observing a lot of my patients, and I identified a few role model patients around me, right? For instance, there was one patient right next to me who was very good at keeping the NIV mask on, all the time, right? Now, I tend to be a competitive person in sports, some from time to time, so I've been told. But I saw him doing that, and I was like, well, if he can do it for such a long period of time, right? Surely I can do it, right? And that helped me to keep the NIV mask on as longer than I might have done otherwise, right? Another gesture was there was an 82-year-old gentleman who was entirely self-reliant, right? And I said, what a great example, right? Here's somebody who's 30 plus years older than me, and is so independent. Surely I can learn from him. Right? Another example is a fellow patient in the ICU who we called Masi Auntie, right? She was the Masi of somebody in the hospital. She was the bearer of good cheer for everybody, right? In fact, she used to get a newspaper because she knew one of the doctors over there, and she would willingly share that with me and with others, knowing that it's a good distraction for everybody. Right? So learning from other patients and seeing the positives there, that was another thing that really helped me. The ICU had a tablet. I'll do a plug for Lenovo here. It was a Lenovo tablet. And that tablet was what patients used to use to do video calls with their family, right? And that really became a lifeline, right? You could tell that we were all trying to get our hands on that, and as our conditions improved slightly, we'd want to talk to our family members and help them see us and hear directly from us, right? There's nothing better than hearing directly from the patient, no matter how many updates you get from the doctor and nurses. And then lastly, and I think very importantly, was this notion of having faith, right? I mentioned this earlier. I had faith in the science behind this. I had faith in the research. I had faith in the medicines working, the protocols being the right protocols or the best protocols available. I had faith in the doctors. I had faith in the nurses. I was not in a position to keep checking what medication I was getting, what dose I was being given, but you just have to have faith in a situation like that, right? So it was really those few things, being positive, being grateful, learning from patient role models, relying on the tablet for video calls, and this notion of having faith that helped me through the really tough times during my hospital stay in the ICU. The best way to describe my journey and my battle with COVID is to quickly read a short excerpt from my book. This is from a chapter entitled A Straight Line Journey. I remember processing my journey thus far as COVID-19 penetrates our house and gets me, mom, and Ridesh. I alight the ambulance to the hospital in solitary darkness. I am admitted to the COVID-19 wing of this reputed hospital. I get ushered to my shared room. I get upgraded to HDU. And then I reach as far as I can go, the ICU. Was the hospital morgue going to be the next and final step in my journey? And what will become of my corpse because no one can come collect it? Should I speak to someone and let them know I would like to donate my organs? But wait, I am a COVID-19 patient, so that option does not exist. I guess the hospital will know how to discard my remains. The notion of this one-way journey lingered on in my subconscious for the next few days in the hospital. So that's sort of how I envisioned my how I encapsulated my journey and my battle with COVID. Right? The hospital stay in particular was, I compare it to flying in different classes on an airplane, right? So you've got economy class, you've got business class, and you've got first class, right, on international flights. The general ward is like economy class. The HDU, or the high dependency unit, is like business class, and the ICU is first class. The difference is the degree of personal attention that you get, right? So obviously in ICU, you get the most personalized attention, and every aspect of your recovery and your health is monitored very, very carefully, right? So that's the most personalized treatment that you get. Right? The costs are also in line with those three classes, right? So just like in an airplane, you pay much more for first class. It's exactly the same here. The big difference, though, is when it comes to the silence, right? The silence that you experience in a room, in a general ward, is much better and much quieter than what you get in the ICU. The ICU is a very, very, very noisy place, and understandably so. The other thing about my hospital stay, and it might come across as a little bit odd, right? But strangely, in the COVID wing of the hospital, you are accepted a little bit more as a COVID patient than you are when you're outside the hospital. I'll tell you what I mean by that. When you're outside the hospital, there's a very, very big emphasis on isolation, right? And isolation is difficult, right? Psychologically, it's difficult. Physically, it poses a lot of challenges, and logistically, obviously, it's very difficult. But psychologically and mentally, isolation is difficult to deal with, right? And the good thing about a COVID wing in a hospital, once you know that you're COVID positive, and so are all the other patients there is no more isolation, right? So instead of being isolated, you're completely integrated. And oddly, that's a good feeling, in a way, right? I know it struck me as a little bit strange when I got in there first, and the nurses and the doctors, and the healthcare professionals, they were all coming up to me, without maintaining social distancing, without being paranoid about getting close to me. But that was a strange feeling after the 4 or 5 days of having had COVID and being in isolation at home. So that's sort of characterized what the hospital stay was like for me. Right. Yeah, the discharge was something that I had started to really focus on after being in the hospital for about 2.5 weeks, right? I was longing for the doctors to tell me, when I was ready to be discharged. As I thought I was getting better, I expected it more and more. But I wasn't in a position to really ask the doctors, and I didn't want to suggest that. Right? I wanted it to come from them when they thought I was good and ready. Right? So, having made the U-turn, from that straight line journey that I was on, which took me from the ward to the ICU, and then I preempted going to the hospital morgue and made a U-turn and went back from the ICU down to the HDU and then down back into the ward. Right. So once I was back in the ward, it felt good. I was recovering well. Day one was, the first day was very strange because of the complete silence, right, that I wasn't used to after the ICU and HDU. But it was a welcome change. And also, when I was in the HDU, and my first day back in the ward, I was able to walk around a lot more. I was feeling much better. I was feeling very good. But day two in the ward, started to see a little bit of a downturn again. Right, I was feeling weak. The oxygen saturation levels were dropping slightly, and it got me really concerned. Right, it got me concerned to the point that I called the duty doctor in the middle of the night, saying, this is what's happening. Do I need, is there any concern? Do we need to speak to any other doctors or get any interventions going? And they raised my oxygen levels a little bit from I think it was 2 liters per minute to 4 or 5 liters per minute, and with that my saturation levels improved, touching the mid 90s. But and that was able to get I was able to get me I was able to get through the night as a result of that. Right. The next morning when I woke up, I jotted a long list of 28 questions for my doctor. Right. I was not going to let him rush in and out. Right. Once he came in, I was going to sit him down and ask him these 28 questions. Right. And surely I did. Right. The primary question was around my health. Right. Why am I feeling worse than I was earlier? And to his credit, he answered all 28 of my questions very, very patiently, and he really took time to explain what was going on. Right, and the way he explained it was my saturation levels were down, and I was feeling weak. I wasn't as strong as I was maybe a day or two earlier because the steroid levels had dropped. Right, so the steroids that they were giving me were 80 mg a day when I was in the HDU. Right, they had reduced that. They were tapering that off, and they had reduced that to half. And that is why he had been telling me to be careful. Don't try to wean yourself off the oxygen too quickly. Don't push yourself, especially without oxygen, to go on long walks in the corridor. Restrict your movement to your activity level to within the room while staying on oxygen. Right. So he was very particular about that, and he emphasized that to me a couple of times during my recovery. But that day, he did explain to me that the reason I'm feeling this weakness is because my immune system now needs to start kicking in organically. The steroids and the blood thinners, both of them have their own side effects, and that's why they can't keep me on it for longer. They need to taper me off it. And as they're doing that, I will feel a little bit of weakness, as my body kicks back in, right? So that was somewhat reassuring for me, right? But in the same breath, he also told me that my lungs cannot chance we cannot chance a secondary infection, because if I get a secondary infection, my lungs will not be able to cope, and that was going to be something that he didn't think that they'd be able to manage. So he told me about this pulmonary fibrosis, which I later on found out is an irreversible damage to the lung. But he was very clear, and he said, we don't know the extent of the damage, right? And it's only once you start recovering and we see the improvement in the lungs will we be able to tell the extent of the damage. But you have to, you have to start that next phase of your recovery, which is, start first to go home, right? And that's the first time he mentioned the word discharge, which I was anxiously waiting for, all this time. And he said, you can go home in a day or two once you feel better, right? And I was like, day or two, I'm not ready for that. I'm not feeling good right now, right? Last 2 days I've been deteriorating, and also, I don't know to what degree, my wife and the family at home are ready to have me come back, right? Remember, at home, my wife is struggling with taking care of my mother, who's also COVID positive and recovering in self-isolation. She's looking after herself. She's got the kids isolated who are still negative. She tested herself for antibodies, doesn't have any antibodies. So, there's just a lot of pressure on her at home as well, right? So I'm not ready to go home, and I'm not sure home is ready for me yet, right? So it was kind of an odd thing. I'd been waiting to hear the words discharge, and now suddenly he's telling me that, and I'm backing off, saying I'm not sure I'm ready yet, right? So it was a good feeling to hear that, but at the same time, I was making sure that we weren't rushing into it, right? So what helped me in transitioning back from the hospital to the home, and then thereafter, think of it as three things, right? And I've captured them down as preparedness, pranayama, and proning. So preparedness had two aspects, the way I think of it, right? One is making sure that the infrastructure at home is in place for you to isolate and ensure a good recovery without any hiccups. And for that, what we had to do was we had to arrange for oxygen concentrators. We had to arrange for an oxygen cylinder in case we ran out of electricity. And what was the most helpful, and I would strongly recommend this for anybody coming back from the hospital to the home setting, make sure you get a long oxygen cannula, with at least a 7 to 8 meter long tubing. Right? That'll give you tremendous flexibility in being active around the house while you're on oxygen. It's easy to say, you won't need it, but as the doctors advised me, it's important to stay on it, to accelerate the recovery. And I had to stay on it for about 3 or 4 weeks, 24/7 once I got home. So the long tubing is really good to give you flexibility to go to the restroom, walk around the house, and maybe even outside the room that you're isolating in. The second aspect of the preparedness was this respirometer machine, right? Not even a machine, I wouldn't call it that. The idea of this is, this is probably the single best thing you can do for your lung therapy. Right? I did this while I was in the hospital once I started recovering, and I continue to do this even now 4 or 5 months after I've been back home. Right? Don't be disheartened. Right? It is for me. It was quite disturbing the first time when I tried this. I wasn't able to do it even a handful of times, right? But as you keep practicing it, you will get better at it, right? And remember, you only need to do the inhaling part. There are some people who recommend that you also exhale into this, hold it upside down and exhale. That's not required, right? Just do the inhaling part. Make sure the balls are elevated to the top, and use that. Right? The second aspect of what helped me recover is pranayama. I have been diligently doing pranayama almost every morning, since I've been back, and that's really, really been helpful. Right? You all know the benefits of pranayama for mental health as well, but for the lungs, that's probably a very, very impactful thing. And I spoke about proning earlier, so I continue to prone even now. right, as part of my pranayama and a morning exercise routine, and would recommend that everybody do that. Right? Um, the the last aspect of recovery at home is the mental health aspect of it, and please make sure that you have somebody to talk to. Right. For me, my wife and my sister continue to be pillars of strength, and I spent a lot of time talking to them about their experience while I was in the hospital, because I don't know what they were going through, right? And vice versa, right? So we were exchanging stories, and it's strange how the same event was being perceived so differently from inside versus the outside, right? And there are many funny stories that I narrate in the book about that, right? But that was really important. And then, for me, strangely, writing down my thoughts and putting it into a form that I can refer to later on was also a good way for me to make sure that I was letting out the emotions. I was talking about it. I was being cathartic about it. Right. So please make sure that you have somebody that you can talk to and share this experience with. Right. And I think those things will help you and anybody recovering from COVID. So, what inspired me to write this book? Well, strangely, I was never planning to write the book. Right. This was it began more as a coping exercise when I was in the ICU, and it was just really difficult seeing everything that was happening around me. Right. And after the first 2 or 3 days in the ICU, when I started to get a little bit better, right, I realized that I need to find some way to keep my mind occupied, right? And there was no reading material available. There were no devices, to keep us occupied. So it was a little bit of a struggle. And finally, I just asked a doctor if I could get a piece of paper and a pen, and started jotting down my notes and my thoughts about my experience. Right. So that's how it all started. Right. And then when I got out of the hospital, I pulled together a few initial chapters, if you will, right? And I ran it past a couple of people that I trust, including my wife, and a coach that I rely on. And both of them strongly recommended that I should put this down in some sort of a book form, because it could help other people and their families as they struggle through COVID. Right? And that's how the book came about. Right? Professionally and as a marketer, I've always believed that content has to be authentic, right? Otherwise, you're doing nothing but contributing to the carbon footprint irresponsibly, right? I get frustrated when I see people, putting out content, which is neither authentic nor thoughtful, right? So I thought to myself, I'm never going to have anything more authentic to write about than this experience. And that's when I decided to go ahead and uh, put this book together, and was happy to be able to publish it on April 21st. Right. Ironically, the day that I published this book was also the day that I tested positive for COVID again in the second wave. Right. Fortunately, this was not severe. In fact, I was mostly asymptomatic, and fortunately, we caught it early enough that I did not pass it on to anybody else in the house. So the date of the book being published was coincided with another very emotional and scary day, in the life of the Bhalla family. But fortunately, with the good graces of God and everybody else around us, we came out of it without any damage. Surely, I see this as a second lease on life that I've been given, and not too many people have a chance, like I have. and my heart goes out to all those that have lost loved ones during this COVID pandemic. But I'm determined to make it count, and make this innings be better than the first innings. Right? What I've learned through this experience is a lot of really important life lessons. This includes the sense of gratitude that one has to have, right? The positivity, which I think is what is the biggest thing that'll get us through this pandemic, right? Need to acknowledge the position of privilege that me and my family enjoy, right? Could not be more grateful to and for my family and my loved ones, right? Need to have faith in science, faith in the doctors, faith in the frontline workers, right? And above all, need to really respect humanity, right? I make a point of mentioning this, right? One of the things that crossed my mind when I was in the ICU, when I was at my worst, was, my life is in the hands of complete strangers, right? So be nice, right? I think we all need to really live up to that expectation of if you do good karma, you will get good karma, right? And that comes from being nice. And lastly, I would say just even during these very, very difficult times, right? Just the blessings around us, right? We have to open our eyes to that and appreciate that and acknowledge that, because that's what's going to give us the strength that we need. What is the one mantra that everybody should live by? I don't want to be preaching, but this was something that a dear friend of ours, who was the first person we knew back in February of last year, of 2020, who was diagnosed with COVID. He sent out an email to some of us in a circle of friends, informing us about them testing positive. And his subject of that email was "Act, Don't Freeze." Right? So I really think that's a very powerful message, right? So for anybody who's suffering through this disease and or helping loved ones or dear friends and family fight this disease, please don't let it paralyze you, right? That's the worst thing that you can let it do, right? Find a way to act, right? And there's so much you can do in terms of helping one another, in terms of donating money, in terms of getting access to healthcare professionals, in terms of helping people get oxygen cylinders, oxygen concentrators, helping people find beds when they need, right? Working with the gurdwaras that are doing such an amazing job during this crisis, right? There's just so much that we can act. So please don't let the severity of the disease paralyze you, right? So act, don't freeze. Thank you.
So thank you for watching this video, and we hope you were able to be inspired. The link to Rahul's journey in fighting COVID has been encapsulated in his book, and I would sincerely urge each of you to go out there and buy it. All proceeds of this book go toward the COVID relief and the nurses' welfare. And if you like our video and are interested for more such content, please head over to our YouTube channel, The Firefly Circle, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share our videos. Thank you.